Hey guys, George at SoundTraxx here, and a lot of times we get calls from customers that are experiencing interruptions with their locomotive when it's running along the track. And a lot of times this isn't always at the same spot, and so they immediately think maybe there's something wrong with the decoder. But is there? Let's take a look and find out. Now, many times when we're running our trains down along the tracks, we're looking for the optimum power delivery to the decoder to keep it running. You can't operate a decoder that has no power. So we have to make sure the power path to get to the decoder is clean and free of interruptions. But when you're running a model down the track, the wheels are constantly turning, which means that point of tangent, the point of the wheel that touches the rail, actually lifts. As the wheel turns, power is either reestablished through the same wheel as it just moves along as the wheel's turning, or let's say there's some sort of internal property or worst case, a piece of dirt that now no longer allows that wheel to touch the rail, means power has to be restored through another wheel. So a lot of times when you have models like this, for example, that have 6 wheels on each rail, now you've got 6 paths for the power to get to the decoder. So when it comes to power interruptions, most of the time, if your model's losing power when you're running, it's because your power is being interrupted. Now, there can be a myriad of different reasons why. For example, in a sample like this where I have sectional track, let's say these joints aren't actually transferring power from one section to the next. That's a very common one. And so when it comes down to wiring your layout, ideally you'll want to have every piece of rail attached to the bus wire down below to make sure you're getting clean power to the decoders through the rails. But if you run into an instance where, let's say for example, this power is interrupted, and as I run across, the power cuts out, the decoder can't work without power. So you always want to make sure you have a clean power source to get power to the decoder. Now, when it comes to this, there's a few different things that we all focus on. Number one is everybody talks about cleaning the wheels and cleaning the rails. So when you're cleaning the rails, typically you'll see those eraser type assemblies that you rub along the top of the rail. And just for example, on this particular one, I'm just going to kind of rub my finger down the track because these haven't been cleaned in a while. And I don't know how well you can see that on the camera, but you can see that there's actually some black deposits that are actually put on my fingertips. Now that's from the constant arcing of the power being picked up through the wheels as you roll down the track. And that arcing creates a carbon, and that carbon film is what you're normally seeing along the rails. So you want to clean that off as much as possible. Like I said, you've got those cleaning erasers. I know there's a few companies out there that offer track cleaning erasers. You can also go in and get other things such as a cleaning car from our friends at Tony's Train Exchange called the CMX Clean Machine. There's also those ones that have the rollers that you put the different chemicals on, and they will roll down and run and clean the track. And those are some ways to help clean the track. But what about the locomotive? Well, first off, we want to look at the wheels. And the wheels that are on the locomotive are your first point of contact. Note the word first. We'll get into that in just a second. But as the wheels are rolling down the rails, you have to make sure that that surface is clean as well. So one of the most common things to do is you get some rubbing alcohol, and this is just a container we use here, and a paper towel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little bit of rubbing alcohol on this paper towel, and you can kind of see the wet paper towel there with the rubbing alcohol. And you lay that across the tracks. Now what we're going to do is we're going to run the locomotive onto the paper towel so that it cleans its wheels. So because this is sitting on the power track, I'm going to use my DCC system for this. So I'm going to go ahead and get it moving. So as the locomotive runs onto the wheel, or onto the towel, let's go ahead and mute the locomotive. So now as the wheels are turning on the paper towel itself, it's basically the alcohol acts as a kind of a solvent that will break all that carbon loose and be able to make sure it stays on the paper towel. Now this is one of our trade show mules that you've seen us use a lot of times in videos. You've seen it at trade shows, things like that. And this, we try to clean the wheels pretty regularly, but I will say it's been a few shows since we've done this. And so with this locomotive model, go ahead and bring it to a stop. Now there is some momentum in this one, so we'll go ahead and bring it to a stop by tipping it over. Now there isn't really a whole lot of crud on here. You can kind of see there that there's a little bit of crud on there, but not really a lot. And so that's one of the keys of keeping the wheels clean. But the further in the model you get, those wheels are still rotating, and so something has to pick up power from the wheels or the axles to get it to the wire, which is what's wired to the decoder. So a lot of times you'll see bushings or bearings, and we've done a video on this in the past where I took apart a similar model, this GP15 in Athearn Genesis, where there's an end plate on the end of the axles that the axle goes into, and that's where the power is transferred from the wheel, aka the axle, and into the power where the wire is going to the decoder. Now on some of the models like this, you'll see in this particular photograph here shared by one of our customers, which inspired this video, actually you'll see some bushings inside the gearbox that the axle is pressed through, and that axle is then, or those bushings now are contacting a metal plate inside the gearbox assembly. Now the problem with this particular design is inside the gearbox there's a lot of oil and grease and stuff like that that potentially can get onto the axles or those bushings that potentially can now inhibit track power getting to the decoder. Because oil, I don't know if you've noticed, is not necessarily the best conductive material there is out there. And so this is where if you notice a model starting to hiccup and start and stop a lot, you'll want to dive deeply into the model and clean up all of those contact points that you can find to make sure to get reliable contact. There's also some products out there that you can purchase to help enhance the DCC track power. Our friends at Aerocar Lubricants, ACH Hobby Lubes, I believe, you'll see the website down below. But they have a product called DCC Track Cleaner and Signal Enhancer. And basically it's a liquid. You can lay it on your track, and you could even use it in those moving parts like the bearings and bushings that we were talking about in this particular model. Now I've done that on some of my GP15s that I've talked about, and even going back to that other video. But there's also, for the one that's actually inside the gearbox, you could actually even use a conductive lube, which is a conductive lubricant specifically designed to carry track power that allows you to now enhance the track power. The biggest thing about putting that in the gearbox, though, you want to make sure that it doesn't cross left to right, or else you end up with a direct short across the rails. So you always want to be careful when you're applying the cleaners and lubricants and other things to help enhance the conductivity to get track power to the decoder. Now, a couple of other things that I want to talk about. Number one is on the decoders that you installed yourself, there's a blue pilot light on there. And that blue pilot light is there to help you to identify that track power is actually applied. So if you notice a model starting and stopping quite a bit, you can take a look at that model with the shell off and run it and see if you notice that blue light flickering or anything like that, because that's indicating that you're losing track power. Again, the decoder can't operate if there's no track power. The last thing I wanted to talk about is a new model. Now, Graham has actually shared this Alaska model with us here. This is an Atlas GP40. Now, a lot of customers will call up and say, well, I'm having hiccups and hesitations with my model, and it's brand new. Well, just because a model is brand new doesn't necessarily mean that you want to eat off of it. And so this particular piece of paper here was actually used on this GP40 as a brand new in-the-box model to clean the wheels. Now you're seeing a close-up picture of this now on the screen, but you can see that there's still a lot of crud that have been cleaned off those wheels, even though the model is technically new. So just because a model is new doesn't mean that you can just absolve yourself from track cleaning and wheel cleaning. You want to make sure that you clean all of that during your normal maintenance. So most of the time it's not a problem, but if you do notice a problem with a model, even though it's brand new, take a moment, clean the wheels at the very least, and see if that helps. And if that doesn't finish or completely fix the problem, then you may have to take the bottom of that gear tower out, pull the wheels, and clean all that stuff that everything contacts, because all the paths of electricity are potential hazards to get the decoder power. And if your decoder doesn't have power, you can't run trains. So that's everything I've got for you guys this week. I hope this has been helpful for you. Be sure to go back and watch that other video where I show you deep dive of how to clean the wheels and all the contact points in a GP15 like this model here. Also, if you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the chat below. Let us know what you're thinking, and we'll help answer any questions you have. But if you want to have a deep conversation about wheel cleaning, things like that, give us a call or an email at support@soundtraxx.com. We'll be happy to help answer any of the questions for you. So that's everything for this week, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.